course, you may be seated. You still remain under your previous oath to tell the truth and nothing but the truth. Counsel.
Thank you, Justice Msaneke. I was still on the two policies, the national policy and the provincial policy. And before I proceed on that, let me place a proper context of this. And I'll refer you to one of the recommendations by Professor Makgoba, that is the Health Ombud. That is recommendation 18. It should be volume 1. Recommendations 18, are you on? It's right at the end of the...
The page, Counsel?
The original page number of the document is page 55 at the bottom of that document.
I don't see page 55 here. Is it in the first volume of the...
I'll request Obageng to assist you. Are you there?
No, Counsel. Oh, 18 years. Yes, Counsel.
Yeah. 18.
Next page. 18,
Is it on page 55? 55 is here. Is it this one, yeah?
Are you on the page?
Yes, Counsel.
Okay, thank you. Then recommendation 18, and on the following page of that 18, that is recommendations to the Gauteng Department of Health, GDOH. There's the first bullet point, second bullet point, the third bullet point, the fourth bullet point. It says, if the institutionalization of CUs is to be implemented in South Africa, it has to be done with the provision of structured community mental health care services as recommended by the MH policy and articulated by Professor Freeman's document with the adequate planning and allocation of designated resources. The next bullet point, specialists run community and psychiatric services as described in the MH policy must be included in the proposed NH1 structure and funding in order to address the needs of people with severe psychiatric disability who require specialist level care close to their home. The last bullet point on that page, GDOH must develop a capacity program for all newly established NGOs within 45 days, submit such to the OHSC within 90 days. Do you see that?
Yes.
Do you understand what he refers to?
Yes.
What is it?
It's a document or a practical strategy needs to be drawn up with
Yes.
implementation after that.
Yes. And you admit that you are not capacitated as at the time when you decided to implement this policy.
Counsel, can I explain, Judge? It was drawn up. The document was drawn up, but in terms of implementation and execution of the project, the document was not used.
The document was not used.
Was not used.
Which document are you referring to?
The strategic provincial document that speaks to this points here.
And the strategic provincial
Well,
document.
Councillor, you also will have to be a little louder than that.
I'm
please.
sorry.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Yes. But what document are you referring to?
The strategic provincial document that speaks to the strategy that needs to be drawn up for implementation to execute this function.
It was not drawn.
The document was drawn up, but it was not used within
Oh, I
the
see.
project.
And that strategic provincial document is the ELA 121 I have referred you to.
Yes, Council.
Okay, let's
Why
go
was
to
ELA 121, the policy document, not used?
Again, Dr. Manamela said we could not use this because of the unusual situation and time constraints to decant patients from Life Esidimeni facilities.
So you're invited to ignore your own policy.
Judge, in terms of
Just
implementation.
answer the question, please.
Yes, yes, Judge.
The WISA policy, ELA 121, is your evidence, and Dr. Manamela instructed all of you not to follow the policy because of what reason?
The unusual situation that we need to execute.
What does that refer to?
She says that this is it's an unusual project and it has time constraints in view of the placement of the Life Esidimeni patients.
What was unusual?
Pardon, Justice?
What was unusual?
The deinstitutionalization of the patients from Life Esidimeni facilities.
And that had to happen outside the policy adopted.
Yes, Justice.
Councillor.
Thank you. Let's now go to the policy. That is ELA 121. Go to page 16 of the document.
Yes, Council.
There it makes reference to specialized, table 6, specialized psychiatric hospital beds.
Table 6, or this is one. Page 16 is table 7.4.
Or 7.4. I'm sorry, let me see. Yeah, go to table 6. 6, it's on page, let me see. It's 17, I'm sorry.
Page 17.
Yeah.
Yes, Council.
The table 6 maps out
1 minute, please, Council. I just want to get to table 6. Because page 17 is 7.6. Let me just
yeah,
get-
7.6, then underneath it it's table 6.
Oh, I see. Yes, Council.
Yes, table 6 is on the page. Then it gives you a certain projections. That is for Sterkfontein, Vescopis, Tara, Cullinan, private hospital, contracted care, Life Esidimeni. Then it gives you the number of beds there. Do you see?
Yes, Council.
What does that signify to you?
In view, when we construct this document, we've done a surveillance in all our services from community-based up to specialist hospital services. And these were the result, what was currently approved, what was not used, what was usable, what was approved, what was unused. Those are the different tables it notates.
So when you were planning to implement the marathon project, you were working on these projections.
No, Council.
What were you working on?
There was, we couldn't use the whole document, the strategic document. With the marathon, what happens was we were concentrating on the facilities and hospitals that was assigned to us to go and survey.
Yes.
That was with the transformation of services, there were quite a number of hospital wards that was closed within hospitals.
Yes.
So we had to go and visit all these closed wards to see what we can use and what we can't use.
Yes. In order to implement.
In order to implement the project, not this document, yeah.
So this is what you found available.
No, we didn't use this document, Council.
Okay.
I thought the evidence clearly was, okay, Guchana, that this was compiled,
Yes.
shelved away, because circumstances do not permit following policy.
Yes.
But you can pursue your question. I'm not
Yes.
sure what
No.
the
Yes.
question is. I thought that's a recordal on table
Yes. It's
6, a recordal of the beds that were available.
it's a recorder. Yes, it's
And
correct.
I thought you were going to be asking her to confirm that the beds that were available at Life Esidimeni were those that appear on table 6.
Yes, I'm coming to that.
Oh, you are coming to that.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
dealt
very
with
well.
somewhere else. Yeah. Then on that is on page. My numbers are not properly aligned. That is on page 18 of the document.
Yes, Council.
At the bottom there, the document records, the plans are continuing to ensure a deinstitutionalization or down referral of chronic patients from Life Esidimeni home or NGOs.
Yes, Council.
Are you there?
Yes.
What does that mean?
On page 18, table 7.
Yes.
This was the result after the surveillance we've done
Yes.
within all the districts. The type of facilities that was available, the number of facilities, the number of beds at that time available, number of places, that's the daycare centers available, the number of beds, and the number of places.
Yes. And at the bottom, there's an explanation there. It starts with, the province needs to work hard to ensure equity in the distribution of community-based mental health services with special attention to the following services. Then you set them out.
Yes.
Then
Council.
at the end, you say, plans are continuing to ensure deinstitutionalization or down referral of chronic patients from Life Esidimeni home or NGOs.
Yes, Council.
That was the existing plan
Yes,
of the
Council.
department. This is
Yes.
what we are supposed to implement.
Yes, Council.
That is to down refer.
Patients to Life Esidimeni and NGOs
Exactly. To down refer from.
from various hospital facilities or new admissions, etc., to these two places, to Life Esidimeni facility and to NGOs.
Exactly. And does this document anywhere else makes a reference to the need to not to down refer but to cancel the
No,
agreement?
Council. There's no, in the whole document, connection or even mention or anticipation of closure of Life Esidimeni.
Okay. Let me take you to the specific passages. And on page 33,
Yes, Council.
are you on page 33?
Yes, Council.
Yes. This deals with mental health key priorities for
Yes.
2014 to 2020.
Yes, Council.
What does that mean? Does it mean that you are expected to achieve these key priorities within that period?
By 2020,
By
there should have
2020.
been, yeah, we had to draw up plans. How are we going to achieve the down referral from 2014 to 2020?
The down referral.
Yes.
By how much were you supposed to down refer up
Um,
until 2020?
What we've done, can I explain, Justice?
Yes.
With this document, what it says here, by 2020, and when Life Esidimeni personnel was part and parcel of this process when we worked it out, So we also aligned the Life Esidimeni contract to this effect, that by 2020, and we've put measures in place for Life Esidimeni not to admit patients at LIP, but on a more structured way, so that there's not unnecessary admissions, that we keep to the national framework by decreasing unnecessary institutionalized facilities. But Life Esidimeni was still part and parcel to have continued with
What
this
does down
process.
referral to 2020 mean?
Down referral 2020 means justice in all institutionalized facilities. That is your hospitals, your Life Esidimeni contracted areas, that we down refer and have enough facilities to correctly place patients that need less in constrictive areas to be placed and serviced at.
So where did the plan come from to shut it down?
Justice, with due respect from my side, I have no idea. We were just told in a meeting where Dr. Manamela informed us about the closure of Life. And we've discussed that within our meetings and asked where does it come from, who decided, and we alluded on the strategic plan and the Life Esidimeni, the newly revised Life Esidimeni contract. And she says we have to abandon all that because she has received instruction that Life Esidimeni should close down, and we have a limited time period to close down. At that stage, we didn't have a date, and we should look and work towards that.
Did you draw, was he aware of the 2020 down referral plan? Obviously so.
Yes, Justice. After the compilation of this document, then this document was supposed to have been taken by her to the HOD to be signed off, so that we can start implement this document.
But she signed the document, didn't she? If you look at the front part of it.
The front part, there's no signature of hers. Yeah, she's, Dr. Crosnell has signed, the former HOD has signed the document.
I see. So but in any event, you say her instructions were that ignore this plan and deal with extraordinary circumstances.
Then it was called this marathon project.
Council.
Yes, let me take you to deal with that issue of down referral. Page 58 of the document.
Yes, Council.
Are you on page 58?
Yes. I have the document, Council.
Yeah, what is that? What does it refers to?
This page refers to the gradual phased-in process of the institutionalization.
It's a phased-in.
Phased-in process.
Okay. And let me draw your attention specifically to the last column at the bottom on the that is on the left-hand side, the measurable objectives. Says reduce the number of beds by 200. No, the number of beds by 200 beds annually at Life Esidimeni.
Yes, Council.
And the next performance indicator, the column number of beds, says reduced.
Yes.
Then the next column, means of verification, stroke a data source, monthly report.
Yes.
What does that mean?
When we start with the, when we start with the implementation of this document, that monthly reports should be compiled for submission.
Then the next column, 2012-2013.
Yes, Council.
Actual baseline. The number at the bottom is 2,260. That was the capacity at Life Esidimeni. Is that correct?
Yes, Council.
And the following financial year as well, 2013, 2014, the same number.
Yes, Council.
2013 and 2014, the same number exists.
Yes, Council.
Then it starts to reduce 2014, 2015.
Yes, Council.
So what does that signify?
After the surveillance and our reports from various districts, I realized that we cannot start sooner with the deinstitutionalization.
Yes.
And you'll see from 13 up to 14, the number remains stagnant so that we can upscale all existing NGOs to be ordered to start with a down referral.
So that
And
is
also look at new NGOs that's supposed to open, that we can take them through the process. And as I've said earlier on, it can take up from 1 month to a year to really get a facility properly in place to place patients there.
so that is for the financial years where the number remained the same. It indicates that you are not ready at all.
Yeah, we were
to-
not ready.
That is to downscale.
Yes, Council.
And being not ready, it means that your NGOs or your community-based structures were not ready to take these
Yes.
patients.
Yes, Council.
Okay.
When
Then,
all this was breached, who did you report to? I mean, I look at the schedule, it seems to be rational, and all this is thrown away. What did you do to prevent this?
Justice, in terms of the implementation of the Esidimeni project, this document was not used at all.
Yes, but you saw that it was not used and held and raised risks for mental health care users. I'm talking about accountability. What did you do?
Within the Esidimeni project, there was also Mr. Nsnoche, that was a project leader, and we've raised and we've discussed our concerns. Dr. Manamisa, who was the direct supervisor of Dr. Manamela, where I took her around to a few NGOs to enlighten her the process of down referral, what the NGOs should look
Who
like
did
and all
you
that.
report your consent to?
Dr.
Who's
Manamela,
senior to you?
Dr. Manamela and Dr. Manamisa was the chief director. And she concurred with us as a team that
They
we're not
ignored
ready.
you, they went ahead with the project, right? But what did you do? Did you go further and report to somebody else?
Dr. Masamisa alluded to the fact to Dr. Manamela that she agreed with us and she bear with our concerns. She also, after have seen the places and what I mean by when the places should be ready and how long it will take to get a place ready for placement, that so I assume in all my ignorance that they will discuss it further on senior level, because she was the chief director at that time in charge of the project supporting Dr. Manamela. And she has said that she will discuss it further with Dr. Manamela. She even asked Dr. Manamela to come up with things, and she will support Dr. Manamela that if we cannot implement the project, she will support the process and they'll take it further.
The answer is you did nothing besides reporting to the two, telling them you're unhappy.
Justice, again, in my ignorance, I believed, and within the system, that if you report to your senior and other seniors, it will be taken into account and information will come back. The information that came back was, we cannot continue with normal situation, it's an unusual situation.
yes. It is quite clear from the document specifically on page, that is page 33 and page 34 of the document, that on your key deliverables of the national policy framework and strategic plans, specifically on page 34,
Yes, Council?
the last column, it
Yes.
says by 2020, community mental health services will be scaled up to match recommended national norms and will include 3 core components. And would I be correct that this was planned to be achieved by 2020?
2020, yes, Council.
And Did you inform that is your leaders, that you are not ready
Yes, Council.
to implement this project?
Yes,
Your
yes, Council.
community,
They were aware. that
they
we
were
were
aware
ready.
of that?
Yes, Council.
And despite this awareness, the project went ahead.
Continued. Yes, Council.
And did you also inform your seniors that it is the policy of the department that we should scale up these services by 2020 and not to abruptly abandon this document?
Yes, Council.
Okay. Then finally on this point, let me refer you to page 36
Yes, Council.
of the document. On page 36 it says, that is table 20.
Table 20.
Table 20
Yes,
on
I
page
see it,
36.
Council. Yes.
Table 20 sets out objectives, achievements, challenges, strategies to resolve the challenges. And let's focus ourselves only on the first column. That is objective, to improve access to mental health services through contracting services for chronic mental health services. Then the achievements. The department has contracted a total of 2,260 beds from Life Esidimeni for chronic care.
Yes.
That was the status quo at the time.
At that time, yes.
Then the challenges: inadequate financial resources to sustain the services, non-adherence to ALOS, and low discharge rate. What is the ALOS?
It's all, when we go back to the objective, it doesn't just include the community base, it goes from clinics to hospitals, that we need to strengthen all levels of care in
All
order
levels.
to
No, the initial
reach.
question is, what does ALOS mean? That acronym, what does it refer to?
I'm trying to think, no, Justice, I'm
Is it the all level of care you have referred to?
yeah, services.
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 Then it records inadequate beds to respond to the needs for placement.
That speaks to the community-based services.
Then the last column, it tells you on the strategies to resolve the challenges. The funding model for contracted services to be reviewed and the number of beds to be scaled down annually. Again, there it
Yes.
comes again. Discharge plan to be developed and appendices to be reviewed. The community-based services to be upscaled to accommodate reduction of the beds at contracted services.
What is the question, Council?
You see? Do you see that?
Where are you reading, Council? Sorry? On page?
On the same page, the
On
last
the same
column,
page, the
strategies,
larger,
yes,
okay.
strategies for contracted services to be,
Oh, yes, I see here.
yes, and the number of beds to be scaled down annually and so on. So
Yes.
that is from the entirety of the policy. You'll agree with me that there is nothing that speaks about the cancellation of the contract with Life Esidimeni.
Yes, yes, Council.
Okay, thank you. And numerous witnesses had testified. I'm not going to take you through to all of those. My colleagues would refer you to the specifics, some of them. But the one specific evidence which came up here was that there was an incident where Dr. Manamela was present, and you were also present at Cullinan Center,
Yes, Council.
where, and it is Diane Noile who testified on this, as well as Dorothy Franks, that both of you were present, and you personally moved beds and patients from one ward to the other. Is that correct as a fact?
Yes, yes, Council.
And Manamela's evidence was that she did not do that. Was she correct in denying that she was present?
No, she wasn't correct, Council.
And as well, you would know by now that there's an issue, there whole...
I'm sorry, before you walk away from there, why did you push beds around like that? You have had.
Justice, can I explain?
And Ms. Dorothy Franks.
May I explain?
Yes, certainly.
What happened on that day, it was roundabout on a Saturday past 11. I received a call from Dr. Manamela that I need to accompany her. She can't get hold of Mr. Tabane. So I asked her what the reason is. Then she says we have to go to Cullinan. And I ask her, what's the reason? Is there a crisis or is there problems? She says, no, I must just accompany her. And after probing, she didn't come out and says, we need to go there. So I met her at Cullinan Center later that day. And when we arrived there, she then informed me about the decision to make way at one of the wards to place more patients at Anchor. So then I alluded to her, but it belongs to the Siabadinga, the space belongs to the Siabadinga NGO. Then she says, but she needs beds and she needs to make place or space for these people. Then I alluded to her the fact that it's on a Saturday, number one, the manager is not there, and NGOs are autonomous. We cannot do that without permission from the manager. And then she instructed the supervisor, was delegated at that present for the Siabadinga Center to get a hold of Mrs. Norile. Then they spoke over the phone, and then she says, Ms. Norile agreed and we can go ahead. So I asked, then I again alluded to her, let's do it on Monday, because this is Saturday and I feel the manager needs to be here. Because whatever you do, the manager needs to give direction. Where do we put what and what do we do? And then she says she cannot wait until Monday. It needs to be done immediately. So she made the supervisor to take us to the specific ward. And then she started moving the beds. And we were all standing there, myself and the care workers and the supervisor. And she instructed us all to assist and start moving the beds.
Where were the patients?
Most of the patients, there were still 2 patients in the ward and the others were outside. It was in the afternoon. The patients were sitting outside. There was, I think, 17 patients in that ward.
There were 70 patients in the ward?
17, but I think a few of them was on leave of absence, away to their families, and the other beds were empty. There were a few beds that was empty that was not in use. Why did we have
to move the beds around?
To make space for the other patients that would come from Life Esidimeni. And she alluded that there's only a few days left for Life Esidimeni to close, and they have to get the patients out there. Life Esidimeni said they must remove all patients because most of their staff has resigned and others has been placed.
You as head of NGOs within the mental health care directorate, you knew that was wrong, wasn't it?
Yes, Justice.
And you knew that that's not how to treat patients. Or NGOs, isn't it so?
Yes, Justice.
But what's more, did Anchor Life have a license?
Anchor had a license similar like Precious Angels because they were supposed to be situated at Kalafong.
Did they have a license?
For Kalafongites, not for Cullinan.
Did you issue the license for Kalafong?
Yes, for Kalafong, not for Cullinan.
And you see them at a different place, congested patients, and you help move around beds. Why didn't you tell Manamela you're not going to do that?
I did, Justice, but she started moving the beds and instructed all of us, inclusive the care workers and the supervisor, to start moving beds.
And did you ask the patients?
There were only 2 patients that was profoundly
No, the patients were to
disabled.
get into the beds, or were they irrelevant? Did you ask them, do you want to be moved to another NGO or another place within the facility?
No permission was asked, Justice.
they were irrelevant to your decisions and your conduct?
No, Justice, it wasn't irrelevant. I've alluded my concerns to Dr. Manamela, but as I've said, we had quite a number of disagreements, and
Can you show
she
us
started.
one document where you wrote out your concerns?
It was during our meeting procedures, and at that stage, it was done immediately within that discussion.
And the license under which Esidimeni operated, do you know how they obtained the license, if they had? And under what circumstances did they come to occupy Cullinan Center?
Esidimeni did not have a license made out to them. And in terms of operation, I only became known with Esidimeni's presence when Dr. Manamela instructed Mr. Tubane that I should accompany him to Cullinan. Can I explain, Justice, or continue? Can I continue? So when she says, because there are 2 deaths at Cullinan, and then I ask her, but Cullinan is a hospital, there's nothing now to do with us. We've got so much work, because that time there was a lot of patients that was already sent down to NGOs.
Yes.
Sent down to NGOs. And then she says, we must just go. So when we got to Cullinan and speak to the CEO, she took us to the specific area, to this ward. And then the CEO explained to us that this is an NGO that has been placed here, and Dr. Manamela knows about it. So I wasn't aware, and I was not involved in the placement of those patients. So I have no idea the date they've been placed there, by whom they've been placed there.
Let me refer you to the specific passage of Ms. Diane Noile's evidence. That she says, you delivered the license because you said they were still fixing it. That is, you are still trying to arrange their license. Then she went on, the reason the license was delivered on that day, it was because the seniors from the provincial mental health were coming, which it was the DDG and the MEC was coming. When she delivered the license, she took it and she put it at the back of my door, my office door, and the reason she said, I asked why is she delivering the license that has another name. She said the DDG and the MEC are coming. They will not see that it's written Life Disciples. They will just see if there is a license, so that it is how it was delivered to us. So this is what Ms. Diane Noile had said in relation to the licenses. Can you give us your response on that?
I've never handled a license in district level from my time of appointment within the department until now. What happens with license, it goes down to the district and then being disseminated out to the different NGOs. And a license wasn't constructed for Esidimeni. And as I've said earlier on, license has been made out according to the budget letter, and that time it was part of Life Disciples that was supposed to occupy certain areas within Cullinan Center to run as an NGO.
Yeah. So that passage is incorrect.
It's incorrect, and I never spoke to Mrs. Mnuile about that. I wasn't involved.
Okay. In fact, the license appears on one of the ELA documents. It's ELA 40.
ELA 14.
40.
See this one? It ends on 27.
Yeah, yes. It's 40. 40. Oh, you don't have it?
No, sir.
I'll borrow you this one. Do you recognize that document?
Yes, Council. This was made out to Life Disciples International. And the manager of this NGO that was supposed to have been operational on Cullinan was Mr. Wagner.
Okay. No, thank you. And just to close off your evidence in chief, on this, or in relation to the to two issues, that is the licensing. Are you aware of the provisions of the regulations that the license must be issued for a specific premise, it is not transferable, and so on?
Yes, Council.
And when you realize that these other entities or NGOs for whom licenses were issued in relation to Kalafong were actually operating somewhere else, why didn't you stop it? That this is in contravention of the regulations.
Council, Justice, if I may explain, as I've said earlier on, the licenses were made out, areas and spaces have been identified in the marathon project for placement, and then, as I've said, I wasn't instrumental in all this. When problems and challenges occur, the district coordinators and even some of the NGOs would make me aware it was hectic, so I was running all over. When I got to certain of these places, even with a placement, if it was said this facility should take 10, there were more people, so there was a lot of these areas were overcrowded. Where then I phoned Dr. Manamela and I made her aware what is happening. Then she says we'll sort it out when the project ends. And she wanted me to change the licenses. I said to her, I don't know, because when we call, and if I go out to a certain NGO, because I was supported by the NGO manager within Tshwane, the whole Tshwane team was very supportive.
But you,
And then-
in fact, played along, didn't you?
Justice, I had to play along to
Well, let's first
safeguard
say
the
yes.
patients.
Let's answer the question first, and you can say why. You played along with all those activities, isn't it so?
Justice, I didn't play along. If I can explain with the activities, I will become known of the activities when I was called to a particular NGO. So then only I'll be aware. That is why I said with the second incident, I phoned Dr. Manamela and made her aware of it. And then she says that I have to come in and change some of the licenses to rectify it with the new placement or the reduced numbers. I said to her, I don't know, we cannot do that. Then she says we'll do it
issuing
afterwards.
of licenses contrary to the law is an offense. It's
Yes.
a criminal offense.
Yes, Justice.
You know that.
Yes, Justice.
And you guys just merrily went on doing exactly that. Backdating things, getting premises that don't exist, allowing people to operate when they had no licenses, issuing licenses for numbers which were inconsistent with capacities at places. And you were part of that and merrily carried on. Is it not so?
Justice, yes and no. Yes, if I can explain again. In terms of issuing the licenses, that was done before the 1st of April. And then the marathon project happened and certain places have been identified to place patients. And because of the different people involved, I would every time become aware of the other areas when I was called out.
Did you ever report to anybody that licenses are being issued in conflict with the law?
Dr. Manamela was aware and the HOD.
Besides her, did you ever tell anybody else about obvious unlawful conduct?
Justice, no.
No. What steps, if any, did you take to protect any of these patients who either were deceased or survived the marathon project?
Justice, the
What steps did you personally take to protect the mental health care users?
Justice, the steps that I undertook during that time of the project was very, very hectic. Most of these patients that have been placed, there was a lot of ill patients. And so in my capacity, I would then arrange with all the different hospitals within Tshwane to transport them to, I made a meeting, explained to the CEO, and the casualty officer, because it is a line of admission that we're sitting with this problem and we'll be bringing patients in. The district office supported me, and patients that's not so crucially ill, they've assigned a person to assist us to take them to clinics. And it was really, really hectic from morning until noon. The minute the patient has been placed into a certain NGO, we'll start running from that time.
It's a long answer. Did you ever report to the MEC about what you saw? Ill patients that you were rushing to hospital?
I've reported to Dr. Manamela.
Did you ever report to the MEC, Ms. Qetani Mahlangu?
Not to the MEC.
Did you ever report to the HOD?
No, Justice. Can I further explain? In terms of that, I've asked Dr. Manamela to alert the seniors.
Did you ever report to Mr. Sinogi?
Yes, Mr. Sinogi. That is why they came out on this visit to Cullinan and various places within Tshwane, because I spoke to Dr. Manamela and says she must bring the team out, the senior management out, to come and see what is going on. And that on that basis, they came out to Tshwane to do the visits. So I've reported, and they came out to the area to visit the different areas.
Yes. In relation to the licenses for Kalafong Heights, and that refers to Anchor House and Precious Angels, who ended up operating at different premises. What I want to find out from you is that why were those premises not occupied by these two entities?
Council, the first instance when I went out to survey the facility, I could see it would incur a lot of cost.
Yes.
And then Dr. Manamela insists, remember with the initial discussion, NGOs could utilize hospital premises. And my question was, if the NGOs does, who's going to be responsible for renovations of these areas? And then she says, she then discusses within a meeting with the NGOs and explained to them if they're willing to do that, they can do that. Then I drew up a letter. I then asked Dr. Manela, can I draw up a letter, and she should take it further to senior level, that because the other structural things or like electricity, etc., will cost me a lot of money, and the NGOs won't be able to do that. Can I draw up two letters, one for refurbishing of NGOs and one for hospital services?
Yes.
I've done that, and it was both signed.
Yes.
After the conclusion of Kalafong Heights, which in the first instance the CEO says that place was earmarked for demolishing for the new premises of Kalafong Hospital. And then I remember there was a report on all these things. So senior management, they've seen this report, and then I alluded to the facility manager, and she also made senior management aware of there were two wards that was that structural impairments that would cause consultants, etc., to come out, and it will cost a lot of money. Then after a week, Dr. Manamela came back to the meeting and says we should continue. She called the NGOs to that site with one engineer and FMU personnel and says NGOs should continue. And if I don't want to support the NGOs, she will do it. Hence, the NGOs has plowed in a lot of money, not just Precious Angels and Anchor, the other two, Nsovo and Lachai. Three of them has plowed in their pension monies to do structural cleaning, put in windows, etc.
At Kalafong Heights.
At Kalafong Heights. And that was very, very so. Besides just meant to bring the patients down.
Do you know how much they expended on this cleaning exercise?
It was a lot of money. It was really like a Lachai manager has put in over 300,000 rand. Enka, I think they've put in 200 and something. All of them has put in a lot of money, because if you think you have to construct and clean a particular area which was in a bad vandalized situation, and these people had to do that. And I just stood back and I said, sorry, but they continued, because from their notion was to support, remember all these were known NGO managers, and they were concerned where will the patients go, what's going to happen, and Dr. Mamela ensured them. Before starting also, I've devised and developed a letter so that the NGOs in all hospitals from all the districts could go out and survey the extent of work that will be incurred before they start something.
Were they reimbursed for their losses?
No,
They were
Councillor.
not reimbursed.
I've tried to follow that up afterwards.
No will be good enough, eh? You have many questions still coming your way. Let's reduce the words. The answer is no.
No,
Next
Councillor.
question, Council.
Yes. Then, in relation to that, there was evidence that there was a company that was identified to provide linens to the NGO. Is that correct?
Yes, Council.
What was the name of the company?
It's not what happened was this was discussed in a Vescopis meeting, and I wasn't present. At our Monday meeting, Dr. Manamela instructed me and gave me the particulars of this person,
You have
Mr.
to speak
Stephen
louder,
Maritz.
please. We want to follow what you're saying. Yeah.
Dr. Manamela instructed me to contact the person's name was Mr. Stefan Maritz,
Yes.
to phone him and make contact with him to start arranging for the linen. When I met him, it was, I think, if I recall back, on a Wednesday. He was in hospital, he had an accident, and
You was to
Is-
supply linen for what? For NGOs?
For the NGOs.
Who would pay for the linen?
that is what I've asked with because if you go to the PFMA stipulations,
Okay.
Yeah.
Who would pay
Who
for
would
the
pay?
linen? Were you told whose money would pay for the linen?
I've only asked that afterwards, Justice. After
What
I
was the
spoke to
answer?
Mr. Maritz.
What was the answer? Who would pay for the
The
linen?
answer was that, according to their discussion within the meeting, the NGOs would pay for it.
Was the linen supplied?
Yes.
And it was
Justice
paid for
Council.
by this?
Only two NGOs paid. It was Sharma and Anchor that paid in full. The other NGOs did not pay.
So the losses that this linen supplier probably incurred, was he reimbursed as well?
No, this person even lost his house because of that.
The linen supplier lost his house because he was never paid.
Yes, Justice.
And
Why are we talking about payment? I'm sure there'll be many questions asked. Why didn't you people arrange that the NGOs be paid timeously so they can feed and look after the patients?
Justice, what happened to that was, in view of the process, remember, I didn't have a direct function anyway. I then found all the
I'm not
districts.
asking you
I'll
to
explain.
build up all these excuses.
Okay.
I just want to know, why didn't you make arrangements so that money flows to the NGOs in time so that patients can be looked after?
The initial implementation of this marathon was said that all the LE money would go directly to NGOs. And as I've said earlier on, there wasn't any process in place to down-devolve the money.
Why wasn't there a process in place to make sure money reaches the NGOs? This
Because-
is your field. You were working there.
Can I explain that, Justice?
Yes, explain.
What happened when I realized what was going on and the NGOs won't have money, and because of the circumstance, I went to the finance section and I discussed with my counterpart, Mr. Makabate, and explained to him, and he says, I should gather all the, speak to the districts to gather all the documentation so that we can start that process. That is another process that's quite lengthy.
Now, the question is not that. Why didn't you arrange that the money be given to NGOs
The process.
at the same time or before patients were transferred to NGOs?
Because of the PFMA process that needs to be in place, and there was nothing in place, Justice.
Why was that process not in place in time so that patients can get what is necessary for them to live?
What is necessary, they need to have money.
Yeah, why didn't you arrange that the money reaches the NGOs in time?
There were no paperwork in place to implement in the financial
Why
section to
wasn't
pay
there
them.
paperwork?
Just
You
as
are the person in the province responsible for NGOs and how they interface with your directorate. Why didn't you make sure it happens?
I've tried justice and I was stopped. When I found the districts to, in between their work, to gather all the paperwork so that they can submit it, I can arrange that. Then 2 NGO coordinators phoned me and says, Dr. Manamela said they should stop that process because of all the other work, it can be done afterwards.
So Dr. Manamela stopped the
The-
paperwork so that money can flow to NGOs timelessly. Is that your answer?
That's the process, because if there was paperwork, the money would flow. Without paperwork, no money can be
Did
paid
she
out.
say why she stopped the paperwork?
Because
Which
of
would
the
facilitate money going to NGOs?
because of the amount of work and other activities going on, the coordinators should wait with it, and it can be done afterwards.
Yes. And are you aware that in terms of Regulation 6, you had an obligation to pay subsidies to these NGOs
Yes.
in order for them to meet the objectives of the Act?
Yes, Council.
Okay. And despite being aware of this obligation in terms of the regulation, nothing other than the attempts you refer to were done, I think, from your office.
No, Council.
Okay. Thank you. And finally, I just want to refer you to the minutes of the meeting of 13 November 2015. And I'll hand up 2 documents, that is LR 120 and 123. And from 1 to 3, on the first page, those identified in the block against 5, number 5, or items 5,
Yes, Council.
those who came from within the Department of Health.
Yes, Council.
And are you aware of these minutes?
Yes, Council.
Okay. And they represent what was discussed at the meeting.
What was discussed, Dr. Mamela and Mr. Tabane at the meeting, it was just a brief explanation of the deinstitutionalization process. I was
And,
asked to
yeah,
talk
before
about
that, do we have the presentations?
No, not me, not here, Council, but I think it ought to be available. It is available. I
have-
don't know whether it's in the documentation.
Okay. No, they were not attached to the minutes. And the attached document is an attendance register of NGOs meeting, West Rand and COJ. But the date of that attendance register is 22 February 2016. Why is that so?
The Council, I didn't construct this document, so I don't know. This belongs to another meeting, this 22 February 2016. Because this meeting is 13 November 2015.
And the attendance register, it's 2 pages down the line for 13 November 2015. So we must ignore the reference to 22 February 2016.
According to my knowledge, Council, I'll say yes, because I'm
Okay.
not aware. I didn't construct this document.
Okay. So those are the people who attended this meeting.
Yes, yes, Council.
Okay.
How did you choose the ones you're going to give the business?
Can I explain the process, Justice?
That's the question.
Dr. Mamela has had several meetings with several sections of people, including us at Mental Health and with NGOs.
No, but how did you choose who was going to be favored with the status of an NGO?
The request that went out, people that are interested to extend or to start new NGOs should submit their names.
Now we can see the register, there are many people there. I'm asking, how did you decide who would be given the status of an NGO for the marathon project?
After the names and interest has been submitted, and that is where we started visiting all these NGOs, all of them, because some was not even considered to be part of the marathon because of the inadequacy of the facility.
How did you choose who would be favored with the status of an NGO and would receive mental health care users from Esidimeni? I'm asking for the third time the same question.
Justice, I did not make the ultimate decision. It was Dr. Mamela who has assigned the visits to us and says we should visit all of them. And based
No,
on
but who
the
decided
adequacy,
Precious Angels will get patients and Anchor Life will get patients, and how did you choose the NGOs that you favored with licenses?
Justice, if I can just explain, I didn't favor all the licenses were drawn up based on the budget letter right in the beginning with 20.
But who entered and chose the NGOs who would get licenses?
It was
And
based on all the visits that has been conducted by the Marathon Project, a facility that is deemed to be ready that can receive
I don't hear
patients.
you, I don't understand you.
Justice, I'm trying to answer. I don't know how to answer.
Please answer, it's a very important question. It might lead us exactly to what we want to understand. How did you pick and choose the people who would receive patients?
Justice, as I've said, all the requests came in. Visits were then conducted, and places that was perceived to be ready to receive patients' facilities, those were then chosen to be on the marathon list.
You're talking in indirect terms. I want to know who made the decision. Who said Precious Angels is ready to take mental health care users from Life Esidimeni,
Dr.
and they
Namela
must be given a license? Who made that decision?
Dr. Namela was the final decision maker.
Dr. Manamela made that
Yes.
decision.
Yes, according to the reports she received back of readiness.
How did she choose the NGOs?
In terms of the readiness reports, this is how it was termed.
It contradicts many parts of your evidence, but I'll leave it there for now. Councillor, please go ahead.
Thank you, Justice Msaneke. Ms. Jacobs, I have nothing for you. Thank you, Justice Msaneke.
Advocate Hassan.
Thank you, Justice. Good afternoon, Ms. Jacobs.
Afternoon, Council.
My name is Adila Hassan, and I'm a member of the legal team that's representing the families of the deceased. I'm going to, in the course of my questioning, I may repeat some of the ground and some of the questions that you've been asked, but I'd ask you to please try to answer to the best of your ability again. If I may just begin with your designation at the time that this project was underway.
Yes, Justice
Were
Council.
you then the Deputy Director in Mental Health Services responsible for NGOs?
Yes, Council.
Was there anybody more senior than you responsible for NGOs at the time?
Dr. Manamela.
Was she responsible for the NGOs as well?
Dr. Manamela is responsible for the whole program, NGOs, clinics, hospitals.
So you deputized
Yes,
her?
yes, Council.
And you say, you said in your evidence in chief that you obeyed unlawful instructions.
Yes, Council.
Could you have refused, in your mind, to obey those instructions?
Yes, Council.
But you did not, even though you could have.
Council, I did. I've tried to raise concerns. We've done it within meetings with various other stakeholders, and I, on my own, I couldn't, and I had to, and my core responsibility responsible for NGOs was I wasn't in that capacity during the project. I was assigned
well, I'm going to come
tasks.
back to that. I just, you say that you knew that you could have refused.
Yes, and
Yes.
I did, yes.
But that you did not refuse.
I've tried to raise my concerns. I've raised my concerns, not
but
even
you,
trying.
but you didn't refuse to perform the tasks that were being required of you. You did not refuse to carry out the unlawful instruction.
Yes, Council.
And did Dr. Manamela explain where this instruction was coming from?
Dr. Manamela just said it was an instruction from above, and she has to carry out the instructions, see that the instructions are being implemented.
So she, too, was carrying out an instruction.
According to how she explained to us.
And what did she mean by an instruction from above?
Deinstitutionalization from Life Esidimeni to NGO and hospital services.
No, that's not, that answer doesn't correspond. I'm asking, what is it, who is she referring to when she said the instruction came from above? Who was instructing Dr. Manamela?
She did not give us a name and say senior management. She just said senior management.
Senior management?
Yes.
Well, who comprises senior management?
Normally, the senior managers are all various departments within the province, from the different sections, inclusive of the HOD,
Within the
DDG,
Department of Health?
Within the Department of
Right,
Health.
so who comprises senior management within the Provincial Department of Health?
If I can recall correctly, but it's all the different departments, programs, the HOD, the DDG, and I don't know, because I've never attended the senior management. We only attend our meetings and we get our feedback and everything from Dr. Manamela, where we have concerns and stuff that we raise. She then takes it back to senior management.
And you had no interaction with the HOD in this
No.
project?
No, Council.
And so the instruction was not coming from the HOD as far as you could tell?
I don't know, Council.
Do you know of whether the MEC was involved in this project?
What we've been told, everybody was involved in the project. That is what Dr. Manamela said.
But who owned the project?
I don't know, Council.
You don't know?
No.
But it wasn't Dr. Manamela, it was somebody more senior.
I don't know, Council.
Well,
I
you said that
cannot-
Dr. Manamela said she herself was receiving an instruction from above. Yes? Is that right?
Yes, Council.
But you don't know who, you can't put a face to the...
I can't know. It hasn't been voiced to us.
You also said that Dr. Manamela called this an unusual situation, and that it was so unusual that legal prescripts had to be abandoned. Is that right?
Yes, Council.
Why did the department place itself in such unusual circumstances?
Council, I cannot rightfully answer that because I can't answer that. I don't know.
Did it seem strange to you that you would be required to abandon all legal requirements in the course of your duties?
Yes, Council.
And you know that in the course of your duties, your core function was the oversight of NGOs.
Yes, Council.
and not any NGOs, but NGOs that provide services to mental health care users, correct?
My core functions to all NGOs that provide mental health services, Council.
Yes, that was what I asked you.
Yeah,
It-
yes.
NGOs that provide mental health services,
Yes,
not
Council.
NGOs that provide other services,
No, Council.
social services. And you say that you drew up the criteria in ELA 119. If you could look at ELA 119, the basic requirements for all NGOs.
Yes, this is a summary of the guideline, just to assist with training and that smaller usable document, Council.
It's a summary of the guidelines for
Yes.
licensing NGOs.
Guidelines and all policy documents that we
And
pertains to.
you drew up this,
Yes, not me alone, in conjunction. We don't work alone, always in a team with.
but you took
stakeholders.
responsibility for this document.
Yes, yes.
And when did you draw this up?
This is a long time ago, Council. I can't even remember the time.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years? Can you give me a ballpark? How many? When you say a long time ago,
before-
is it months or years?
I wasn't alone instrumental in this. Before I was appointed at provincial level, I was working partly in Tshwane and partly at provincial level. And I think it was,
Well, it was in place at the time that the
so we've drawn at that time when it
Life
was in
Esidimeni
place.
project.
Yes.
And why you say that these were from guidelines? And do you know what the basis is for these requirements? What do you think are the reasons that you are required to comply with these criteria?
Council, so that the NGOs that are operational be in accordance with legislation.
To be in accordance with legislation.
Yes.
And you see from as you would know full well from this document, there are different types of criteria that have to be complied with.
Yes.
And it begins with a list of criteria that relate to financial governance and financial statements of the NGOs, that there should be a bank account, and so on. Is that so?
Yes, Council.
And this is to ensure that the NGOs are capable of doing the work they say they will do.
Yes, Council.
And then there's a category of criteria that are related to the conditions to be present at the
Yes.
NGOs. So can I ask you to turn to page 2? If we could look at some of the criteria. For example, in the middle of the page, it says medication. And it says all medication must be. And then there's a bullet point list: stored in a locked cupboard, stored in a dry, cool place, suitable for use, that is not expired, clearly labeled, by which it means name of the user, name of medication, directions for administration, a current prescription signed by a medical doctor, the correct procedure for telephone orders must be followed, a record of all administered medication must be kept, and again, it's explained how to do so. Those are quite detailed criteria, I would
Yes.
say.
Yes, Council.
The next bullet point under medication is record keeping. And again, under this criteria, there are detailed requirements for how to keep records of the mental health care users. The next bullet point deals with nutrition. All meals must be nutritious, balanced, varied, according to the season and suitable for the user. Meals must be served in a dining area and not in bedrooms. Chairs and tables must be available for the users when eating. Meals must be served appropriately, and so on, and so on, and so on. That list also goes on.
Yes.
And it's then specified further what type of nutrition, depending on the facility, whether it's residential or
Yes.
daycare. Clothing, linen, and bathing requisites. It says every user must have a minimum of the following: suitable mattress, 2 complete sets of linen, 2 blankets, 2 pillows, 2 towels, 4 face cloths, suitable appropriate clothing for day and night, toiletries.
Yes.
And then the requirements for outings, and then facility and equipment, which it's stipulated must be clean, hygienic, safe, and in a state of good repair. And then the next is safety. All opening windows must be burglar-proofed. Outside doors must all have security gates, a perimeter wall or fence, and the list goes on and on. Emergency equipment must be present. And this is a very detailed list, you'd agree?
Yes, Council.
So they're not mere technicalities.
No, Council.
Do you see these as mere technicalities?
No, Council.
In fact, the rationale is to prevent harm to the patients.
Yes.
Rationale is to ensure the health of the patients.
Yes.
And you said that the NGOs to which the live Esidimeni patients were sent did not meet these requirements.
In the beginning, they did not. What I've done, especially the ones, the
In the
bigger
beginning,
ones,
when the patients were sent to the NGOs,
they had,
did you know whether the NGOs met these requirements?
I could not visit all the NGOs, but the ones that I was involved was, they had the initial requirements in place, like the initial linen. And when I realized, and I visited other NGOs to see what the status quo was, and I realized they don't have enough because we look at quality type of service and they need more than just one set.
Well,
Do
can
you-
do us some favor and answer the question, please?
So what I've done was to gather more linen equipment
That was
from
after the
hospitals.
fact. I'm not asking you about after. I'm talking about at the point when patients were moved.
Before they were moved.
Yes.
The initial stuff was in place, not at all NGOs and not all the requirements was in place.
But you can't. Do you recall that
What?
earlier in your testimony in the evidence in chief, you said that you had to abandon the normal process?
That is yes, I did know. That is why I say I'm not a firm with all the NGOs, only a certain number of those and the ones that I've been assigned
Well,
to.
how many did you visit?
3. I
Three?
was assigned to 3. We were divided into the different
Yes,
NGOs.
the
so
3
each one
out of the
has-
27.
Yes, each one has a certain
Which
number.
3?
Sebo Serena, El Shaddai, Cullinan.
Cullinan is not an NGO.
No, the one that was on the Cullinan premises.
Anchor and Siabadinga.
And Bopalong Center. Those 4.
Okay, that's more than 3.
It's 4. Those 4. I forgot about Bopalong.
And in respect of those NGOs, you followed these guidelines.
Yes, Council.
And you ensured that they were all suitable.
Yes, Council.
And you're sure of that.
Yes, Council.
And you say for the others, you don't know whether the criteria will have complied with.
As I was going along and I find out, because as I'm saying, because all the NGOs...
Listen to the question and
I don't know.
answer the question.
Must I just say
You
yes
see,
or no?
earlier in your testimony, you said that you had to abandon these criteria.
My
That you said,
core-
in fact, Ella 119 was not utilized in the marathon project.
Yes, it wasn't.
It was or it was not?
The document wasn't used.
Was
but
not.
Yes, Council.
And the audit reports and the audit checks that were to take place did not take place as
The
it would normally take
The
place.
formal audits, yes, Council.
Did not take place.
Yes.
So you could not have known whether these criteria were met, could you?
The marathon, what was done with the marathon run, Council, with these assignments, you would go out to a place and do a comprehensive brief check what is available at the NGO, and reports was constructed.
You would
As
do
I've
a,
said,
just repeat that again, you would do?
a brief, concise observation on what is available and assist these NGOs and also alert them if there wasn't things in place. The engineers was with, and then also district personnel to support and to monitor as we go along.
But is
that
it your
things should be in
view that
place.
these NGOs met the criteria?
Excuse me.
Is it your view that the NGOs met these criteria?
The ones that we've said yes, that we've furnished to Dr. Mamela, there was others that wasn't, that didn't meet the criteria, and it was known and given through to her.
I'm going to take you through a series of documents that are on the record. And in the course of that, I am going to put a version to you that directly contradicts what you've just said. That in fact, these criteria were not met and that you were aware of that. So I'm just letting you know so that you can bear that in mind. I'm forewarning you.
But before you proceed, counsel, is it your evidence that when patients were transferred to NGOs, the requirements on ELA 119 had been met?
Justice, as I'm saying, some NGOs, not all. And those were given through to Dr. Manamela,
Okay,
which...
tell us of the some who met the requirements.
Yeah,
I want to spend a lot of time on, I just want to understand what your evidence is. Your evidence that some met the requirements in 119, ELA 119.
If I can't recall it out of my head, Justice, but if I can think back, it was like Popolong, Sibo Serena was 90% ready, so we assist them to move up to that 100%. El Shaddai was ready, Rebafeni was ready, and then some further field in the other areas. I can't recall all now.
Do they have a
by
service
hand.
level agreement?
No, Justice.
Do they have a copy of the annual license issued properly to them?
Yes, Justice.
Do they have a copy of the NPO certificate?
That I cannot account because we didn't
Do
receive
they have
any
a copy of the
paperwork.
tax clearance certificate?
I don't know, Justice.
Do they have a bank account?
I don't know,
Do
Justice.
they have a current bank statements that they gave you? Did you see those?
No, Justice, I
Do
didn't
they have
see it.
banks segments of 3 signatories?
There's no evidence of
Did
that.
they
I don't
file
know.
a copy of their latest audited financial statements? Do they have an organogram?
No, I cannot account because we did
Do
not
they
have any paperwork.
provide you with a copy of their signed constitution?
No, Justice.
But why are you wasting our time?
Justice,
We have very many important things to do here. Council is asking you to tell her which of the NGOs were ready in accordance with ELA 119.
in terms of
Now
the...
he has to go and find documents to undermine your new evidence.
Justice, in terms of documentation, we don't have any evidence of documentation from these NGOs.
Okay, which NGOs complied then? At the time they received patients from Life Esidimeni.
None of them, Justice.
Council.
Thank you, Justice. Justice, it is about 1:30 now.
Yes. Thank you so much. Let's check.